Okay, so welcome to this first video for National 5 and Higher Biology Revision. This is just a little introduction on how to revise the best methods of revision and also to show you our National 5 and Higher Biology Revision Google Classrooms. So as you can see, I'm on the National 5 Biology Revision Google Classroom just now. I always think it's easy to go to classwork view because it lays it out by topic. And as you can see at the top of the page there, just like the higher biology revision one, which I'll show you in a moment, it says please read this first at the top. So I'm just going to click on that. And this talks about the 4 categories of resources that are available on this Google Classroom. These are learn, check, test and skills. And the idea is that you progress through these 4 different stages, if you like, especially 1, 2 and 3 for knowledge. Skills is a little bit separate, so I'll talk about that later. But for the learn, check and test, this is for the topics and key areas of the course, the knowledge that you have been working on. And we're all now at a stage in the year where we're preparing for the prelim. So we've already completed at least 1 unit. We've almost finished unit 2 in most courses, and if you're in a 2-year higher, you'll have done a lot more than that as well. So for the learn topics, first of all, let's have a look at them. So these are summaries, videos and other resources which allow you to go over topics that you've missed or you found difficult in class. If you had done your Unit 1 assessments, your unit assessment and your ABC assessment, and you had a key area that you did really well with, you scored well in that section according to your assessment analysis, you wouldn't bother with the learn section because this is really for topics that you found tricky and you need to go over them again. It's the same with check. Check are simple, straightforward questions or ways of testing your knowledge at a kind of C level, if you like. And again, these are straightforward questions and activities designed to build your confidence. So again, if you've done really well in your Unit 1 assessments, I should say, then you wouldn't really want to do the check questions, for those topics. However, if you were not confident with a particular key area, again, based on your assessment analysis, you would do a little bit of learn, a little bit of check, and before going on to the test. So the test section, and I'll show you all the details of these in just a moment, the test section is all exam standard questions. These are past papers, sometimes they're just past papers themselves, sometimes they're organised into individual units, or even down to individual key areas. You can go straight to these for topics that you're confident with, so ones that where you, according to your assessment analysis, you've done well with. Or if it's ones you're less confident with, you'll have gone through the learn and check sections first. So if you look at the learn activities first, there's many versions of the PowerPoints, called Crash Course PowerPoints. There's a Matrix Knowledge, and I would always refer back to that. That gives you the correct terminology for all the topics and shows you exactly what you should know for each key area. You've got YouTube videos for revision, which are really excellent, and again, they're both, as you'll see in a moment, they're available for hire as well. And we've also got summary notes. Okay, so if I click on the Unit 1 summary notes, for example, you can see that it covers all the different key areas as separate topics. And for other units, I think Unit 2, it's all together. Okay, so either way it covers them key area by key area, or it's the full unit, again with chapters in it. You can see that Unit 3 is greyed out at the moment, and that's because none of our National 5 classes have yet gone to Unit 3. I'm looking at the teacher view here, so you guys wouldn't see that. For the check section, remember this is questions that are pretty straightforward. It's either getting the basics for the terminology or some of the key fundamentals of the course. Important if it's a topic you've struggled with. We've got Quizlets, quizzes, we've got Google Form quizzes as well on each of the key areas for Unit 1. And all of these have got the answers with them. You can check your answers. Quizlet I really like because it gives you Quizzes I really like because it gives you the feedback for your questions as well, tells you areas that you need to work on. And if there's questions that you're continually getting wrong, Quizzes will keep going over those until you're getting them right. Okay, Quizlet's excellent for definitions, and the Google Form quizzes are great as well because they mark themselves and you can use that to feed back. Going on finally to the tests section for knowledge, there's a really good site called Achieve Learning, and you can get the login details for that from your teacher. The one I really like though is the past paper questions by key area with marking schemes and course specs. I'm just going to click on that second one down just now. And there's a number of things I like about this. First of all, it lays out the topics. So you're now at the stage where you're ready to really test yourself at exam level. Here's, for example, cell ultrastructure. Each section, it gives you a little reminder of what's in that topic. You'll then click on revision for 1.1. Once you've had a wee read over that, reminded yourself what's in it. And you simply get lots and lots of past paper questions by topic. Okay, so you could either type these up on a document, a Google Doc, or simply write the answers down. And once you've finished all of those questions, some are multiple choice, some are short answer, at the bottom you can see there's a marking scheme that will open up a different Google Doc which gives you all the answers. Okay, so you can check your work and see how you've done. So I really like that resource. It's really excellent for National 5. There's a similar version for higher, which we'll show you in a second, but that's really an excellent resource. And we've obviously got the actual past papers themselves, and we're going back quite far. We're going back to 2014. These ones are not available on the SQA website, so that's really useful as well. These multiple choice past paper Google Forms are for whole units. So the difference between these and the check section is there by key area, the Google Form quizzes, whereas the multiple choice and the test section are past paper again, but this time for the whole topic. Okay, and we've got lots of other bits and bobs there you can see. Skills is a bit different, and we'll do a video later on in skills, so don't want to dwell too long on that, but as you can see there's parts of this which involve you teaching you how to do the skills, and there's lots of example questions as well. Let's go on now and look at the higher biology revision Google Classroom. I won't spend too long on this because it's very similar to what you've just seen for National 5. Again, it automatically opens up in the view that says stream down the bottom. So if you go to classwork view, again you'll get it topic by topic, and again it's the same setup. We've got learn, check and test. Some slight differences. The summary notes I really like because, I really like the summary notes because they have got check test questions as well. So I'll just show you that once it loads up. Apologies for the delay there. So this is the summary notes here, and this is for Unit 1, DNA and the Genome, which by now in the course, this stage of the course, we've all done, so it's a good one to show you. You can see the contents, but at the end of each chapter, some nice notes and diagrams. There's concept check questions, which are similar to our key area questions that you'll be doing in class. But again, if I go back here, the other document that's there will give you the answers to these as well. So it's really a useful resource. And again, as with National 5, if it was a key area that you were really good at, you wouldn't bother with the learn stuff, you would jump straight to test. Okay, but assuming it's a topic that you want to work on, you can see we've also got higher revision videos there. We've got a bit higher exam terminology. Some of the words that we use at higher can be quite, the SQA use at higher to ask the questions can be quite tricky to understand what they're asking for. Words like explain, describe and justify. And we've also got a big section there on key processes, big processes that occur in higher that if you can master those, the stages and the order that they go in, then you can gain lots of marks. For the check section, we've got some Quizlets and some Quizizes, and we'll probably put some glossary stuff in there as well. And again, as with National 5, we've got the test bit. So for if you've been through learn and check materials for your key area that you're working on, or if you're already doing well in a particular key area, you'll go straight to the test section. Again, we've got higher past papers by topic. We'd say by key area, of course. And these go from 2015 to 2019 and also 21-22 as well. These work a little bit differently to the National 5 ones. As you can see, it's hyperlinked. So that if I click on a question, that's the blue underlined sections, and I've been studying, for example, key area 1, I'll click on that top question there for 2017. It will take me to, oh sorry, I do need to open up. Sorry, I dropped my PDF there. But if you've opened up with a PDF or in a Google Doc, it will actually hyperlink you to the questions, and then it will take you to the marking scheme as well. So we'll show you that. Okay, and we've got some extended response questions there. Sometimes we call these essays, but extended response is the proper name for them. That's the either 4 or 5 or 8 or 9 markers that you get in the exam. And also, like with National 5, we've got the Unit 1 and Unit 2, because of course we've not done Unit 3 yet. Unit 1 and Unit 2, past paper questions, multiple choice form. So again, you just open that up and it opens up as a put your email in, put your name in, and then you get to try the questions. And again, as with National 5 one, it will mark it at the end for you, and you can check over the ones you got wrong and do something about those. And again, it's got the link to Achieve, which is also really good for hire, so you can have a look at that website. You can get login details off your class teacher. And finally with skills, again, it's a mixture of how to do the skills, some advice, and also some skills and past paper questions to practice as well. Okay, so we're going to leave it there for this section of the video. We're then in a little while in the next section we're going to look at actually trying some exam standard questions to help you prepare for your prelim. Okay, so welcome to part 2 of this prelim prep video for biology, and this one we're going to look at some questions and with a special focus on skills questions. These are some of the trickiest questions that you'll face in either your prelim or your final exam, so it's just a chance to look at those. But first I just wanted to point out that on the resource we talked about last week, which was the Google Classroom, you will find a resource called the Skills Advice Booklet, and the Skills Advice Booklet talks you through all the different types of skills that are you're going to be faced with in higher biology. So it looks firstly, and it's divided by sections, so firstly we look at the kind of skills relating to experiments and variables, okay. The different types of variables, how that relates to validity, accuracy and reliability, which, as you should know by now, in biology are 3 different things and achieved in different ways. We've got a second section on graphs, giving you some advice about drawing graphs and also how to describe and explain graphs and the difference between the two. And then final little section on calculations, so we look at things like averages, percentages, ratios and other kind of calculations. So we're going to try and apply that and use that booklet for some of the questions in the exam. You'll find there's 2 big skills questions. So in 2023 it was questions 9 and I think the other one's 11. So we'll do question 9 just now, and have a look at how, for some of these questions anyway, we can use the Skills Advice Booklet. So question 9 says, an investigation was carried out to study the effect of intensity of exercise on metabolic rates. Okay, so an experiment to look at the effect of intensity of exercise on metabolic rates. A calorimeter was used to measure metabolic rate as shown. So you can see there's a person who is on a treadmill, either walking or running, and as their rate of respiration, rate of metabolism increases, they generate more heat. So the energy ultimately from your metabolism is lost as heat. That heats up the little sealed unit that the person is in, and you can see that there's water pipes coming in and water pipes going out. An idea, which hopefully you would pick up from this question, is that the more the person exercises, the more heat's produced, and therefore the more the water heats up. And you should know from your subject knowledge that as your metabolic rate increases, it generates more heat. It's one of the ways we can measure, one of the 3 ways we can measure metabolic rate. Okay, so the next bit tells you a little bit about the timings, and then we've got a table of results, and then question A is really straight into what gauging your understanding of how this actually works. How can we use this calorimeter? How is it designed to allow metabolic rate to be determined? So the first thing you need to make is that connection to temperature that I've already mentioned. It says you should spot firstly either that there's probes, temperature probes, which can measure the temperature. You could talk about the insulation surrounding it that keeps the heat in. Okay, so that would be the first mark. So really the most obvious one for me, there are a number of options which I'll go through, but the most obvious one for me is that there are probes to measure the temperature. Okay, and then in the second part of this answer we'll explain how that connects to your subject knowledge in terms of metabolic rate. Okay, so first thing we're going to say is the probes. Okay, so first I'm going to say is probes measure the change in water temperature. Okay, to me that's the most obvious one. You might also talk about the copper tube itself being a good conductor of heat, although that is an acceptable alternative to that. I don't imagine many pupils would say that. I can also talk about the insulation thing, about how the insulation that surrounds the calorimeter can also keep the heat in, so any heat produced is going to be measurable. But really to me that's the most obvious one and the one that makes most sense to mention. The second part of this then is to say about how this links to your subject knowledge. So it says here, or you should know, I should say, that metabolic rate by heat production. Now you could of course add to that I'll put it in brackets, because metabolism, or your metabolism, generates heat. Okay, so that's why we can use it. Okay. The next one says, what is the independent variable in this investigation? And luckily for question B, our skills booklet very much can help. There's a big section here on the independent variable and what it is. So this is the variable in an experiment that the experimenter deliberately changes, and its values are therefore known before the experiment starts. It's usually found in the left-hand side of the table and appears in the x-axis. And in the aim, and really at a higher level, quite often it's the aim we need to look to get the answer to this. Usually the table doesn't help us, and I'll explain why a bit later on, but the aim is the one to look at for this one. So if I go back to our question and I look at the aim, and I should say, sorry, and the aim that comes after the words the effect of, so that's, you can see sometimes you're lucky and they've actually got that exact phrase there. So this investigation measures the effect of blah on blah. And you can see the very first line says, an investigation was carried out to study the effect of intensity of exercise on metabolic rate. So it's the intensity of exercise. There's the word of. So whatever comes, excuse me, just need to get my pen back on. There's the word of, and straight after the word of comes intensity of exercise. So that is your independent variable. Okay. So at a higher level, we can't get that from the table. If you just looked at the table, you'd probably say, well, walking or running, or you might say type of exercise. But that's not what this experiment was about. It's about looking at how the intensity of exercise affects metabolic rate. And it actually says in the marking scheme that type of exercise or walking and running is not is an unacceptable answer for this. So you can't put that. It must be what they say in the aim. Just out of interest, if they asked for the dependent variable, and this is the one we measure, again, if you just went to the table, you'd think, oh, they're measuring temperature. But temperature is what we call an indirect measurement of the dependent variable. So the dependent variable in this case is not temperature. Again, we need to go to the aim. So if you look at your skills booklet, we'll do a wee bit on dependent variable. This is the variable that's measured. Its values are known only at the end of the experiment. I would ignore the bit about the y-axis and tables because that doesn't really work for higher usually. They make it a bit trickier for you. So you need to find the aim. So it's the effect of on this time. Okay, so look at the effect of something on something, and it's the on bit we're interested in. So it's the effect of intensity of exercise, independent variable, on metabolic rate. So metabolic rate, if you were asked that, we're not in this particular example, but if you're asked that, the metabolic rate would be our dependent variable. Okay. The third type of variable is what I call constant variables. Okay, they're calling them here variables that should be controlled. So what sort of things in our experiment should we keep the same to make it valid? And valid in science, again, as you should know from last year, means fair. Okay, so we don't say fair, we say valid instead. So for a valid conclusion to be drawn, what would we keep the same? Well, for example, we couldn't. Let's have a look here. We couldn't say. We couldn't use time for exercise because that is mentioned here. Okay, it talks about time and how often it's measured. So time's really out. So if you got your skills booklet, there is a section on, in fact, the very next page hopefully is on controlled variables, or something's called constant variables. So we can't use time. It says time for reaction or time for process. In this case, it would be time for exercise, but we can't do that because it's already mentioned. And the question says, identify two variables not already mentioned. So there's still quite a few we can go for. So have a think about the person themselves first of all. Okay, so if the person who is walking or running or if we had a few people doing this, we'd want people that were the same age, the same sex, the same fitness, wearing the same clothing, because of course your insulation from clothing might make a difference. Same mass of individual, okay, so that's probably one of the few ones that is on our list here. So if you look at mass of substance, in this case it would be mass of substance, it would be mass of individual doing the running. Effectively it's the same person, isn't it? Also looking at it, think about the insulation, okay, so we want the insulation to be the same thickness. The treadmill, well, we can't talk about the intensity of the treadmill, how fast it goes, because that's what we're changing. That's our independent variable, or it relates to our independent variable. But we could talk about the incline. You might know that some treadmills can tilt so they face uphill. So incline of treadmill would be another good answer. We also need to think about the individual in terms of what they're taking into their body. We could look at the oxygen concentration inside the calorimeter at the start. If that was different, then it wouldn't be fair, because obviously oxygen affects respiration, which is a key part of our metabolism. Okay, but you could say the food and drink intake of the individual. Okay, so that's something that would affect it. The more food and drink intake and would affect their energy levels as well. Okay, so I'm going to go for a couple of those examples. I'm going to go for one relating to the person. So age. Sorry, my pen is going off here. So I'm going to go for age of subject. Subject's just the person in there, so you could say age of individual, age of runner, whatever you want to put it. And I'll go for one that relates more to the calorimeter itself. I'll go for thickness. I suppose you could also have type of insulation as well. Okay. So for the graph, sometimes we get a graph like this that has got a line already drawn on it. Sometimes we get a graph which is just completely blank. Because the line's already drawn here, you might think that makes it a bit easier, but in actual fact this means that you have to choose their scale. So if you look at walking, for example, we know that this high point for walking will obviously, well usually, let's just double check that's the case here. Usually we start, it's not moving down, at 0, and we do, so there is a 0 coordinate. Only plot 0 in biology if you're given that coordinate, but we are. So at 0 walking was 0, running was also 0 at that. So you're going to plot the results for running on the graph. But the highest point for walking, that's why I'm highlighting this point at this side here, the highest value for walking at the end of the experiment. Sorry guys, I'm making lots of wee marks there. Let's get it in. So if I go back up, so I'm scribbling on the page there. The highest point for walking is 1.4. Okay, so that 1.4 is going to sit here. I know that's 1.4. Excuse my writing again. That's 0, obviously at the bottom, because we know there is a 0, 0 point. So I wonder if you can work out what we're going up in here. You can pause the video and have a wee think about what we would go up in. So we've got to get from 0 to 1.4. Am I going to go up in 0.1s, 0.5, 0.2s, 0.25s? What would make more sense? Okay, so you hopefully worked out that if that was 1.4 and that was 0, you would be going up in 0.2s. Okay, 0.2, 0.4, 0.6, 0.8, 1.0, 1.2, 1.4, and I will put in 1.6 because that's going to be used for the running line. Then in biology, we're going to work out our bottom scale. That's a bit easier because it's going up much more steadily. So that's just taking our numbers from the left-hand column, time in minutes, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. Just make sure there's none missing there, but there's not, so that's fine. So it's going to go 0, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 is our last one there. Okay, just double check. Great. Now what we do is we're going to plot the scale, sorry, we're not going to plot the scale, we're going to put the labels on the axes. Okay, we must say what these numbers are. So along the bottom, and the tip here is just copy exactly what it says at the top there. So for the bottom axis, it's just time brackets minutes. Don't shorten anything. Don't be tempted to put time bracket mins, for example. Put the full word in that they give you. In other words, copy the headings exactly as they are. Okay. For the next one, we've got the overarching heading, which is temperature increase of the water. Again, don't miss anything out. Don't just say temperature of water or you're not going to get the mark for this. So it's temperature. And don't put temp for temperature, just put temperature. Increase of the water. And you might notice that there was units there, which was degrees Celsius, so make sure you got your units in as well. Excuse my writing there. It's very hard to draw on the iPad with this. And then you're going to plot your points. I'm not going to draw this in because it's tricky doing it on the old iPad there. So on the running one, it goes 0, 0.4, 0.6, 0.9. So it's 0.4. Zoom in a little bit. 0.6. And 0.9, so 0.9 is going to lie halfway, exactly halfway between 0.8 and 1, so it's going to be 2.5 boxes up for that one. 2.5 boxes up from 8, I should say, so it's going to sit just there. I prefer small, not too large crosses. It's really hard to do that with iPad, but if you do a small cross at each point, I can see exactly where you're intersecting the line. And then in biology, as you know, we draw a straight line using a ruler from the centre of one point to the centre of the other. Okay, again, as you can probably tell, I'm finding this rather tricky. So I've got a straight edge here, and I'm just using my ruler to join up from the centre of one point to the centre of the other. I'll not bother finishing off because hopefully you get the idea. Okay. Last couple of questions then. Predict the temperature increase after 35 minutes. To do these kind of questions, what you need to look at is the pattern of the previous increase. So in the previous one, it's now sitting at 1.4. The question is, what if there was a 35 sort of sitting here? What would it be up to around about there? Now, there's no graph paper in this one to extrapolate, so you just look to the previous increase. It's gone from let's see, so it's 1.1 up to 1.4. So 1.1 to 1.4, and that's an increase obviously of 0.3. You simply add your 0.3 onto the 1.4, and that's going to take it up to 1.7. Okay. Last question for now. Draw a conclusion from the results of this investigation. And this is where it's so important to go back to your aim. Okay, running is obviously the more intensive form of exercise. So if I look at my aim, it's the effect of intensity of exercise on metabolic rate. So your answer must relate to that. Okay, you don't need to mention temperature, you don't need to mention the time. We're just going to say as intensity of exercise increases, as intensity of exercise increases, the metabolic rate, so there's our part 2 just there, metabolic rate. That's what we're looking at. So I'm going to use that in my answer. Metabolic rate. Okay. So that's what you're looking for your conclusion. Okay, it's not a description. This would be more like explaining the meaning of the graph. What is the graph actually showing us? Okay, sometimes it will say explain what the results show. Sometimes it will say draw a conclusion. For either of those, you don't want a description. You don't want to be talking about the time and the temperatures and the intensity. You want to be talking about intensity of exercise and how it affects metabolic rate. Okay, so we'll leave it there for now. I hope that's helped. And thank you.